Welcome to this explainer. Take a look at the data visualization on the massive glass screen right behind me. For decades, the global economic map looked, well, pretty much the same. It was anchored by a few highly predictable centers of gravity. But recently, a singular event fundamentally rewired the entire architecture of global trade. We're going to conduct a forensic breakdown of how one of the most secretive economic operations in modern history was pulled off right under the nose of the world's largest economy. Let's dive right in. We're tracking the anatomy of an economic shock, specifically looking at how Canada completely bypassed immense pressure from Washington by quietly activating a massive 14-nation trade alliance. It literally all started with a 22-minute speech. At 10 a.m. Eastern, Mark Carney steps up to a podium in Ottawa. No dramatic buildup, no massive briefing packages, just a thin folder and this absolute calmness that immediately sent shockwaves ripping through global markets. He just flat out stated, Canada is not withdrawing from the global economy, Canada is withdrawing from dependency. In just 22 minutes, with zero prior warning and no closed-door final negotiations, a massive shift in global market mechanics was triggered. But to really grasp how this happened, we've got to understand the massive blind spot that allowed it to occur in the first place. Which brings us to Section 1, the American assumption, a truly fatal miscalculation. So for nearly 2 years, the messaging coming out of Washington was incredibly consistent. Canada needed the United States way more than the reverse. And honestly, the undeniable math totally built that confidence. Nearly 75% of all Canadian exports flowed straight into American markets. We're talking factories, energy companies, agriculture, all deeply, fundamentally reliant on the US consumer. You can actually see it visualized behind me as this massive heavy red vector of American pressure just bearing down on Ottawa. Inside Washington, this 75% statistic mutated. It went from simple confidence into a really dangerous assumption. They essentially believed Ottawa had zero exit routes. They figured any tariff pressure campaign had only one possible outcome, and that was Canada folding. And man, this right here is the strategic mismatch of the century. Washington was calculating their entire move based on Canada's structural dependence on America. But guess what? Ottawa wasn't even looking at America anymore. Behind closed doors, Canadian officials realized this dependency was a critical vulnerability, one they literally could no longer afford. So they completely shifted their calculation to something vastly larger, the world's dependence on stability. This stark contrast in viewpoints is the exact strategic miscalculation that allowed a permanent multipolar system to be born completely undetected by American intelligence. Let's move to Section 2, Anatomy of a Secret Alliance. Let's look at how they actually built this network. Because look, this absolutely did not happen overnight. Ottawa actually spent 9 entire months silently building this replacement. The execution was brilliant because it was so deeply compartmentalized. While the global media was completely distracted by public disputes between Ottawa and Washington, Canadian negotiators were quietly flying all over Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. They deliberately disguised these meetings as totally routine infrastructure or energy consultations. It really proves that sometimes the absolute best place to hide a trillion-dollar geopolitical shift is right inside a boring logistical seminar. The whole thing was fragmented. Energy agreements in one room, agricultural logistics in another. Absolutely no single partner nation actually saw the full map of what Canada was building initially. Only Ottawa held all the puzzle pieces. This total secrecy was absolutely crucial. If Washington had realized what was happening, they could have easily applied targeted diplomatic pressure to individual nations to break it up before the framework was completed. Watch the screen right now as that heavy red US pressure vector completely dissolves, and you see these vibrant green trade pathways emerging from Canada and stretching out globally. Every single nation in this alliance was locked into a highly specific, interdependent role. The European Union anchored the energy and industrial supply. Japan and South Korea stepped right in to secure stable, long-term access to natural resources. India locked down their agricultural and fertilizer arrangements. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they brought the energy coordination and capital liquidity, while Singapore became the absolute central hub for shipping and financial coordination. Guys, this wasn't just some loose, friendly coalition. This was a meticulously engineered, fully operational supply chain replacement. Section 3, 6 hours of silence. Here's how the White House reacted. 30. That is the exact number of days Carney announced until all bilateral trade authorizations between Canada and the US would be scheduled for total termination under emergency executive authority. We're talking energy, agriculture, technology, transportation. And let's be super clear, not a tariff hike, not a temporary pause, total termination in 30 days. And the immediate aftermath inside the White House? Incredibly revealing. For an administration that is famous for its fast, aggressive communication, there was complete absolute silence for 6 hours. No emergency press briefings, no counter tariffs. Let's walk through this timeline. In hour 1, the assumption inside Washington was still that this had to be a bluff, just a dramatic negotiating tactic. But by hour 3, data started pouring in from major financial institutions and allied governments, and they realized physical supply chains were already being redirected. By hour 6, the terrifying reality finally set in. They had to acknowledge the economic irreversibility of the situation. The framework was already done, and let me show you exactly why it was completely irreversible. This wasn't just theoretical posturing. The structural reallocation was already legally contracted. Canadian crude oil, which everyone universally assumed was permanently locked into American refineries, already contractually redirected to Europe and the Indo-Pacific. Canadian potash, which is absolutely critical for American farming, meaning this literally impacts the price of food on your grocery store shelves, was illegally allocated to India and Southeast Asia. Aluminum for aerospace manufacturing was instantly integrated into European defense supply chains. The physical, literal supply chains were legally moving away from the US before Carney even stepped away from the podium. All right, Section 4. The network goes operational. It's all about system momentum now. Literally within 24 hours of the announcement, multiple partner nations across the globe issued coordinated statements, and they all used variations of this exact specific phrase, independent of any single bilateral relationship. Coordinated language like that across multiple sovereign governments simply does not happen spontaneously. It confirmed to Washington, without a shadow of a doubt, that this was pre-planned, highly strategic, and aligned at the highest levels well in advance. See, once a network like this is revealed, it instantly stops behaving like a secret negotiation and starts behaving like a massive system with its own gravity and momentum. Phase 1 was just the activation of those 14 core nations, but almost immediately Phase 2 triggered. Countries like Chile, Vietnam, and Malaysia formally began exploring membership, wanting in on these diversified, stable supply chains. And Phase 3? That is where the true power shift occurs. Private capital. Multinational companies, massive insurance firms, sovereign wealth funds, they rapidly began recalculating all their global risk models. They started shifting their long-term forecasts entirely away from a North America-centric assumption, directly into this brand new multipolar distribution model. Moving to Section 5, a multipolar global shift, because this goes way beyond simple tariffs. What Canada constructed here wasn't just a basic list of buyers, it's a highly interdependent framework. Just look at how these functions support one another. Energy agreements in the Gulf directly support agricultural stability in India. That agricultural scale then supports manufacturing and tech sectors in Japan and Korea. Financial integration over in Singapore anchors all the cross-network settlements, and Canadian resources act as the crucial base input for the entire structure. This interdependent design is brilliant because it means the US cannot just apply pressure to one single nation to break the chain. If you disrupt one component, you disrupt the entire global machine, which would trigger immediate coordinated pushback from multiple major economies all at once. The absolutely crucial takeaway for you from this explainer is understanding this stark shift in our global reality. The old reality was totally defined by economic leverage via bilateral dependence, basically Washington squeezing a vulnerable partner until they got what they wanted. But the new reality? It's about the threat of exclusion from global growth momentum. Suddenly, the United States was no longer facing a vulnerable northern neighbor. It was staring down a parallel, fully operational economic system that quite simply no longer required American participation to function. So, as those green trade pathways fully illuminate the global map right here behind me, it leaves us with an incredibly uncomfortable, yet absolutely necessary question to ask about the current state of global intelligence and economic forecasting. Think about it. If a massive 14-nation trade network, one that is moving literally trillions in global supply chains, could be built entirely in secret over 9 months without triggering a single alarm bell, what else has been misjudged? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the map, everyone.